Thank you. What's up, everybody? It's RobLive. We are back in the studio. There's no AC, but it's early in the morning, so we can still get this done. Jim, how do you like playing in the home field?
It's home, man. There's nothing like just being at home.
Yeah, but we love CMAC, right?
Yeah, 100%. I love everything that they offer us.
Do you love air conditioning?
I love the air conditioning. It's the Central Valley, so it's always 100 and plus.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it's been the 90s and 80s.
Can you explain to our audience why we keep switching up backgrounds, like they see us at CMAC?
Yeah, it's my OCD. No.
No. What I meant was why do they see CMAC background, then they see your studio?
Well,
background?
we started out with this studio, which has been kind of our home base, and during the summer times, it is absolutely hot, and there's no AC up here, so we had an opportunity to expand into CMAC, and they opened the doors for us. And we use them for AC, but not only just that, they actually are airing our shows on their CMAC channel. If you want to tune in and watch that, we're flooding their channel with our episodes. So which is giving us YouTube credit too as well. So
we're very grateful to them.
Very. And so. But then, in the wintertime, we'll probably come back in here. But CMAC has a studio that we're looking into, maybe possibly having a live show with Rob and I. And so pay attention to that.
Nice.
Yeah,
plug.
right, I wrote it all down.
If you like what we're doing, please continue to like and subscribe and share with your family and friends. We truly appreciate the following. And it helps us as well to be able to bring in guests because, as you know, exposure and an audience really develop a sense of ability to bring in who we're looking for. And right now we've got a very special guest. They're all special, and we say that every time, but this is really exciting because this is someone who could have a large impact on the future of the Central Valley, depending on how things go. Mr. Randy Viegas.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. So, Randy, what can you tell us about your current campaign for Congress?
Absolutely. So my name is Randy Viegas. I am running to be the representative for California Congressional District 22. So that is Congress. And I'm currently a professor of political science at COS. I'm also a school board trustee for the Visalia Unified School District. And I know not everybody has a huge background in politics, and I think that's something we need to emphasize. So just really quick, right? We have three branches of government. We have our executive branch, the president. We have our judicial branch, the courts. And then we have what I'm running for, which is the legislative branch, Congress. And within that, we have two chambers, the Senate, and we have the House of Representatives. And so there are 435 members in the House of Representatives across the United States. And I am running for one of those seats to represent the Central Valley here in California.
And so that's the 22nd
Congressional District.
And that covers everything from what, Bakersfield to? So
it's a pretty big district. It's got, lots of East Bakersfield, Northeast Bakersfield, Shafter, Delano, Wasco, McFarland, Hanford, Tulare. It's a very big district. There's roughly 750,000 people across each congressional district. And so I'm running to make sure that we have the representation our communities deserve.
And that representation would be in Washington, D.C.
That's right. Making decisions on behalf of our district, the Valley, and the entire country. And it's really important because Congress has a lot of power when it comes to oversight of the issues, and the president. Congress is the branch that makes the laws in our country. And so often people get excited about the presidency, and that does matter. But it's really Congress that has the power to declare war, to determine where our tax dollars go, and to determine, the laws that we live with on a daily basis here in the country.
Big decisions. What has been the driving factor behind deciding that you wanted to run?
For me, it's been my community, first and foremost. I grew up here in the Central Valley. I'm the son of immigrants from Mexico. I grew up here in a working class family.
So you're the first generation?
Mm-hmm. I worked as many jobs as I could growing up to help my family make ends meet. I worked every weekend at the swap meet and later at my family's auto shop in order to help them make ends meet. And ultimately, I pursued my education. I was the first in my family to go to college. I went to Bakersfield College, CSU Bakersfield, and then thankfully got a full ride fellowship to get my PhD at UC Santa Cruz.
Wow. We got to clap that one up.
Thank you.
UC Santa Cruz. So you were a banana slug.
A banana slug. That's right. That's right. And so I was up there, and about halfway through that program, actually, was when COVID hit. unfortunately, and that started devastating lots of families and communities across the nation. I lost my own grandmother to COVID, and my family's business was struggling. Our auto shop was struggling because, nobody's traveling because of travel restrictions and, COVID, obviously, nobody's getting their car fixed. And I actually thought about dropping out of my PhD program. I thought about, coming home, finding a full-time job to help my family even more during this time. And then thankfully, there was a 1-year temporary position at COS for professor of political science. And I was fairly young at the time. I was only 25 years old. But I applied, gave it my all. And thankfully, I got it. And the next year, they had a more permanent tenure track position, reapplied, and then thankfully got it. And now I'm a tenured professor there at COS.
Wow. And it's very difficult to do, being in education. Jim, I'm not sure how much you've explored the college level opportunities, but they're few and far between, right?
Yes, it was very competitive and a very competitive process. And I'm sure there were lots of, great applicants, but ultimately I've been teaching there for the last 5 years. And then about 4 years ago, there was a vacancy on the Visalia Unified School Board. And, I always preach to my students, get involved in the community, support your community. And I try to do that as best I can. So I applied and, I ended up getting appointed. It's a longer story for a kind of a crazy story, actually. But I ended up getting appointed, then immediately had to make the decision about whether or not to run for office to keep the seat and kind of fill out the rest of the term. And thankfully, I did. I was elected and then reelected in 2024. And so, made the decision to run for Congress to now make that kind of an impact on a greater level for students all across the Central Valley and across the country.
Wow. Okay, so here's just the Rob perspective, and Jim, chime in on this if you will. When you think about getting involved, right, and you talk about politics, people have asked me in the past, hey, you're doing the nonprofit work, you're doing community. Have you ever thought about running for office? And the answer is always no. And they're like, well, why not? You could make a difference. And I said, well, the way they attack and pick people apart, it's just, I don't know if I have the thick skin for it. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like, it's kind of like a celebrity thing where when we look at celebrities, we look at them not as not human beings. Like, I can go after Taylor Swift and say X, Y, and Z about her and question her morality, right? Just because she happens to be in the public eye. And you look at that and go, well, that's the price that you pay. I don't agree with that approach, because we're still dealing with human beings. But it's even worse in the political realm, don't you think, Jim?
Well, yeah, with social media though, because you could throw a jab at somebody and hide behind a phone or a computer. You're not face to face with that person. So I always love seeing Congress battle it out with each other, word for word, face to face, and you could really see who the true people are that are defending their politics and whatever it is, because they don't know how to deal with conflict. And so the world is changed to a degree to where everyone has a bitch session to say about anything nowadays, and they don't have the kahunas to actually come up and actually run and go after something that they want to change.
I think you're talking about the keyboard warriors.
Yeah, oh yeah. There's trolls everywhere in this world. So I mean, don't get me started on politics. It's crazy. So, but I commend you, Randy, for being willing to take that on.
Thank you.
Understanding, right, that is part of the process. And so for you personally, what drove you to the point to say, hey, I'm willing to throw it all out there and deal with all that comes with it?
Yeah, and I can tell you growing up, I never had dreams about being a politician or having my, name on a yard sign. That's not who I am. I love teaching. I love being of service to my community. But ultimately, what pushed me to run was a few things. The November 2024 election, seeing those results, seeing how terrified our community has been with ICE raids across the Central Valley. But I think the thing that pushed me the most was this most recent budget bill that passed, this big, beautiful bill, as Trump likes to call it, and the fact that Congressman Valadao voted for this bill. And let me tell you a little bit about what this bill does.
Okay.
It's going to cut $880 billion from Medicaid. I grew up on Medicaid. 2 out of every 3 people in this district rely on Medicaid. And it's going to cut those billions of dollars. It's going to cut billions of dollars from SNAP, which people use to get food across the Central Valley. It's going to cut programs and funding from WIC, Women, Infant, and Children's. My mother was one of the 40,000 plus women in this district who relied on WIC to make sure she had baby formula for myself and my siblings. And now all of those programs are being cut. Why? Because Congressman Valadao wants to give $1.1 trillion in tax breaks to billionaires, to people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg. For what? So that they can go buy another private island or a yacht? I mean, these are billionaires that don't give a shit about how much our eggs cost at grocery stores right now, that don't care what happens if one of our family members gets sick. Congressman Valadao has a healthcare plan as a member of Congress, and I think he needs to use that plan to schedule a physical because he's been missing that spine for the last few years. And we need somebody here in the Central Valley who's going to stand up and say that money, those resources belong to our communities and not to billionaires and not to special interests. And that's why I'm also proud to be running a campaign that is corporate free. Let me tell you what that means, right? Political campaigns have to raise money to, put out mailers, TV commercials, advertisements, to reach voters, to pay staff, to do all these things. Campaigns cost money. And a lot of these politicians will go and beg corporations and their PACs, their political action committees, for money. And so they're taking money from the very same corporations that are ripping our families off. And then we ask, why is it that Congress isn't doing anything about the cost of healthcare or drugs or education or any of these things? Oftentimes, it's because they're taking money from those same corporate interests that don't want things to change, that in fact want to profit even more off of the suffering of our families. And so I'm very proud to share that our campaign is not accepting any contributions from corporate PACs. We're only accepting contributions from individuals and from groups that align with our vision for the Valley.
Wow, it's a very bold trail to blaze in that sense. And so if there were individuals out there who wanted to help your campaign, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Definitely. We want all the support we can get from across the country, from across the district. If you head to VILLEGASforcongress.com, you will see a link there to donate, and please contribute what you can. Our average donation is just $50. So for less than the price of a brand new video game, you can help our campaign fight back against these corporate interests and help us flip this seat. Because if we can flip just 3 seats across the country, we will take back the House and have a more effective check on Trump. But more than anything, this is about having representation in the Valley that's going to stand for working families, that's going to stand for our farm workers, that's going to stand for our immigrant communities, that's not going to stand by as people try and shred our Constitution and pass laws through executive order. We need somebody who's going to fight and stand for the Central Valley because these issues are literally life and death for our communities and our family members. And that's why I'm fighting every single day to hold our congressmen accountable and fight for the leadership we deserve.
No. And so you're based out of Visalia right now.
Correct.
And living in the Valley, right? You feel like you're directly impacted by a lot of the decisions that have been made.
Of course. And I will say family members, friends, my wife, for example, is currently working on her PhD at UC Santa Cruz. And her lab has lost grants and funding. Opportunities that she was going to apply for are no longer there. I've talked to educators. Our own school district has lost millions of dollars now because of Elon Musk and his Doge department, has cut programs for teacher residency to help us recruit teachers to the Valley. Just gone completely. The immediate impacts of this bill that passed, 65,000 people in this district are going to lose health care. 60,000 households are going to lose access to SNAP benefits, to food. I don't know how these politicians can think about taking away food from the mouths of hungry children. That to me is not the values of the Central Valley. It's not American values. We need to be looking out for one another. We look out for our neighbors. We support one another. And all of this because Valadao wants to give tax breaks to his corporate sponsors and donors and billionaire donors. We need representation that's going to work for us, not for special interests and billionaires in D.C. and across the country.
Okay, with that being said, what is the current timeline for when the next election is coming up and how you're going to position yourself?
So we're going to have a primary election, and the way California works is basically everybody kind of runs against everybody in the primary, and then the top two candidates advance to the November general election. So that election is going to be held on June 2nd. So it's very important. If you're not registered to vote already, please register to vote. If you're 16 or 17 years old, you can actually pre-register to vote, and as long as you turn 18 by election day, you'll have your ballot, and you can turn that in. Yeah. Another thing to note is California does absentee voting automatically to everyone. So what that means is you'll get your ballot in the mail when you register, and then you can mail it back completely for free. You don't have to pay postage. You don't have to, pay for anything. You can mail it back, and it comes with the envelope to do that. Or if you prefer to vote in person, you can bring your ballot to your local polling station and vote there.
Okay. So you have from now until June 2nd, that's the campaign.
That is the primary election. And then, assuming we make the top two, which I'm confident we will then move on to the November general election.
And do you know more or less how many candidates there currently are existing for that spot?
As of right now, there are 3 that have declared, formally, myself and 2 others. And we are the only campaign that is not taking any corporate PAC money whatsoever. It's not taking any corporate campaign contributions.
It's a bold move.
Yes. Yes.
Wow. I hope the best for you,
Thank you.
Randy, and I commend you for making that stand with the corporate sense. I don't think have you ever, is there someone who's done that before?
There are people like Bernie Sanders who have done this, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, candidates who don't take any corporate PAC money whatsoever. There have been a few, but I think we need more, because we need our elected officials to be accountable to people, not to corporations, not to special interests. And I will say, not all corporations are created equally. I'm a small business owner myself. My family's auto shop. And it's important that we recognize that we need to support small and medium-sized businesses, because often they are suffering because of these large monopolies and duopolies that we see in industries, where 1 or 2 companies will try and control the entire market and will try to push those smaller businesses out of business. So we need to make sure that we're protecting Main Street, not Wall Street, across the United States.
Okay. Now, you're an educator.
I am.
And I love the way you opened this up with educating us on how, the basics of government. And one thing that I love about educators in general is we don't make assumptions about what people may or may not know, nor do we make judgment.
Right.
Because sometimes there's a lot of working class people who are very busy. They're in survival mode, and they don't always have the opportunity or time to figure out the intricacies of politics. And so I feel like, educators have an important job to clarify what that is and how it directly affects us. If you could speak right now to your average voter and just try to lay out what you think are some of the biggest things that they should be concerned about when they're voting, what would you share?
I would say I have 3 top issues for our campaign that I think affect everybody. That is the economy, healthcare, and education. So let's start with the economy. We used to talk about the Central Valley as one of the only places in California where you could still afford to buy a home and live a good quality of life. And that reality is slipping further and further away. Life's gotten more expensive here. People are struggling. People have to work multiple jobs just in order to pay for their mortgage or their rents, which have been increasing over the last few years. So why is it that politicians and Congress wants to allow private corporate landlords to buy up homes before my students have the opportunity to? Why is it that they want to turn everybody into renters as opposed to allowing people to have the dream of buying a home, the American dream, owning a home? When it comes to healthcare, we just talked about those cuts to Medicaid that are coming down, billions of dollars of cuts to Medicaid. And it's not enough, in my opinion, to say I would have voted no for that bill, because I absolutely would have voted no. But we have to recognize that we have a healthcare crisis in this country as it is. We pay more for prescription drugs than any other country across the world. They're more expensive here in the United States. Why? If you drive across the border to Canada, for example, do you know anyone who's diabetic, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What do they need in order to live?
Insulin.
Insulin, right? And here in the United States, compare it to Canada, for example. If you drive across the border to Canada, you stop at the first pharmacy you see, you want to buy that vial of insulin, guess how much it costs? Maximum price.
$100?
$100? No, $35. That is the maximum you can charge there in Canada, $35. Back here in the United States, that same vial of insulin, especially if you don't have insurance, costs hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars, right? Why is that? Because Canada and their government, they directly negotiate that price and they set a cap. Here in the United States, we do not directly negotiate with those pharmaceutical companies. Why? Because oftentimes those same pharmaceutical companies are giving campaign contributions to Congress, to members of Congress, including people like my opponents. And so that isn't right. We should be able to afford our medicine here in the United States. People in the United States should not have to be rationing their insulin. Or I've heard stories of people, taking an Uber to the hospital rather than an ambulance because they can't afford it or they're afraid of going into debt. That shouldn't be happening in the richest country in the history of the world. When we talk about healthcare in this country, 2 out of every 3 bankruptcies in the United States are actually tied to medical debt. Let me say that again. 2 out of every 3 bankruptcies in our country are tied to medical debt. That doesn't happen in other countries across the world that guarantee healthcare as a human right. Over 60,000 people die every single year in the United States because they didn't have health insurance. Not because we couldn't save them, not because we couldn't treat them, but because of a system that denied them care. This shouldn't be happening in the richest country in the history of the world. And that's why I want to fight for healthcare for all. That's why I want to fight to make sure that we have access and we directly negotiate and bring down the cost of prescription drugs for our families. It's funny, every semester I ask my students, how many of you or your family members or someone goes to Tijuana to get their dental work done? More than half the class raise their hand. Do you know somebody who does that in your own life?
So here's the thing that they do is they'll take like the Carnival cruise or those different to the pharmacies.
Yeah, and they also buy cheaper drugs there.
Yeah, they, a lot of people I know make a pharmaceutical run for drugs
that shouldn't be happening. We should be able to buy those drugs for lower costs here in the United States. We should be able to get affordable dental care and vision care. We didn't even talk about people who wear glasses. But the reason that a lot of these problems exist is because members of Congress don't want to take those issues on because they're afraid to lose those campaign contributions from Big Pharma or the health insurance industries or others who keep lining their campaign coffers. And so that's why I'm proud to be running as the only candidate in this race that's not accepting a dime from any of those special interests because I'm there to work for people, not for corporate special interests.
Wow, that really frees you up.
So it's interesting, and I'm just going to chime in on this.
Of course.
As a voter and as somebody who's actually, I've interviewed Valadeo. And so back in the day, and everyone, no offense to anyone who runs, everyone on the outside understands, and everything you were saying is validatable, right? But once you're in, then you start seeing how they pay Peter with Paul, how they start manipulating and changing things. How can anyone guarantee the change that is wanted by you sitting on this couch, that is going to be valid when they get in and they see behind closed doors, you know what, dude, we got to do this to do this. We got to do this. I know you want to change this, but it's common sense across the board that we want cheaper health care. It's also common sense that we all know that pharmaceuticals are paying certain things to get certain things. So what makes you different?
Yeah. And I think one thing that we can do to help all these issues, whether it's healthcare, education, I didn't talk about education, we'll get to that, but is getting money out of politics, right? About a decade and a half ago, there was this Supreme Court decision called Citizens United, which has essentially allowed money in politics to explode. It basically says that billionaires and corporations can raise and spend unlimited amounts of money in politics. And since that decision, money in politics has just exploded across the country in races.
They buy their votes.
Yeah. Right? You have corporations running ads. You have billionaires running ads and people buying elections. I mean, we saw this with Elon Musk, and I won't only pick on Elon Musk. There are billionaires across the political spectrum. But we need to get money out of politics so that way our elected officials can actually make decisions that make sense, right? And I think we need to have elected leaders to be bold, to say that I'm going to be an independent voice for my community. I am running and I'm putting the Central Valley first in everything I do. Above any president, any political party, I will not be afraid to buck my own party if they're wrong on the issue. Or if the president, whoever the president is in 2028, is not aligned. I think we need people who are there. I think we can still compromise. I think we can compromise without compromising our values and find solutions across the board. But right now we're in a system where elected officials don't want to work together. I mean, we haven't had immigration reform in this country since the 1980s. And that's ridiculous. Right? Or so many of these issues that we need to address. And so, one, we need to get money out of politics. Two, we need to elect candidates that are going to be corporate free, that are going to be accountable to people rather than special interests. And three, we got to get people out to vote, because I think part of that in not having representative government is just that not everybody votes, not everybody participates. So the less people you have voting, the less likely that person who's getting elected is actually going to be representative of a community.
When I think about talking about people who don't vote, and Jim, chime in on what your personal conversations have been. A lot of times I'll say, hey guys, it's really important that we vote. And you go, right? What I get a lot of, that doesn't make a difference. They're going to do what they want to do anyway. It's kind of what I get. What do you get, Jim?
I do the same. I tell my students all the time, your pin, your check matters, whether or not you're in a Democratic state or a Republican state or whatever it is. Yeah. And a lot of them, Robert, is the high school level don't really know the research behind it. And I give credit to a lot of the ones that extend their research beyond their parents, because a lot of the parents don't really have all that information.
Right.
And so my wife and I always have these battles where, I say things that may or may not be, factual and stuff. And she's like, did you research that? And I'm like, no. Well, then shut up. It's probably not real. But it's more like, the kids come in, oh, Trump this, or, oh, Biden that, or all this. And it's like, did you really think and look into it? They don't want to do the work. They're just kind of riding on the coattail of somebody who thinks it's right and so forth. And the wrong, whether it's wrong or right, becomes the norm. And it's become the norm for so long that you don't remember or know what's right or wrong. Right. And it's so hard to jump into. So I commend you hugely on the fact that you're running against this, because most people, like what we were saying, rather troll it and say BS on a phone or a computer and not really get into the facts and stuff like that. Yeah.
Do the research.
Yeah. And it's really, so for anyone who's running, I always look at, who's this guy? Are they going to do the research? Are they going to find out more than I knew? Because all I know is what's from the media, and half the media is wrong anyway. So it's or liberal or bias or whatever it is. So it's almost, and to be honest, you could almost learn more from a candidate who's running for something than you can from the media, because they only want to tell you one side. And speaking from that, I came from that. So yeah.
Oh, from the media side.
Yeah.
And I think there's a healthy balance here, right? And I think it's good. And that's why I love being here on the show with both of you today. Corporate media often doesn't talk about these issues, right? Why isn't that we haven't had robust specials, talking about why the U.S. healthcare system is so much worse than other countries across the world, or our education system, right? I think it's good that we have podcasts, independent media out there to give people a voice and to give people a deeper insight into who candidates actually are, what they want to represent and fight for. I think a great example of that, I think Senator Sanders went on to, I don't know if it was CNN or Fox. He goes on both, which I also think is important. I've heard some liberals say, you should never go on Fox News. And I don't think that's right. I think we need to meet people wherever they are. I think we need to be not afraid to meet people where they're at, right? Well, I've talked to people in this district who have voted for Biden, who had voted for Kamala, who had voted for Trump, who had voted for independents or third-party candidates. And the way we talk about the issues matters. Right? When I talk about healthcare, I say, and I tell them, valley fever, diabetes, cancer, doesn't give a shit who you voted for in the last election. It doesn't care what your party registration is. But we know we need a healthcare system that works for everyone. Your mortgage, your bills every month don't ask you who you voted for in the last election, and neither will I, because I'm here to fight for everyone. And that includes people I don't know. That includes people who might disagree with me on some specific policies. But I think that we have more in common that unites us here in the Central Valley than we do issues that divide us. And as much as people want us to engage in the culture wars and things that divide us, we are united in saying that we deserve affordable housing. We deserve affordable healthcare. We deserve for our students to have education without having to go hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt. And we need a system that works for everybody. And I'm going to be that candidate to fight for everyone.
All right. Well, Thank you for sharing all of this and educating us on, well, here's the thing that I think you have that's unique. Political science, right? This is what you study.
Yeah.
This is what you do. And now you're actually in the realm of it, right? And you're going to be navigating your way through this. This is what my hope is as an educator. You go through this process, right? And then you come back and update the textbooks and say, hey, listen, this is how it really, because right now you have a textbook. And let's say I'm taking Poli-Sci 101. I'm a freshman in college. And it says, okay, so this is how the systems work. And then there's the little intricacies, the details of it all, right? And a lot of that are textbooks that might have been written by someone who didn't necessarily run for office and see behind what Jim said, behind the door. If you came back and said, hey, this is how it really goes, that'd be a bestseller, right? Wouldn't you think?
Yeah, no, and there's a lot I will say, and I have a deep respect for, of course, like the discipline of political science, but it's one thing to study it, and it's another thing to do it. And there's a lot that the textbook, won't tell you about. I think to that point, in terms of fundraising, right, and campaigns, you'd be surprised what essentially members of Congress have to become professional fundraisers. They spend hours and hours every day on the phone calling donors to fund their campaign and to get contributions for their campaign. And if we were to get money out of politics and find a different system, imagine how much more of that time could be spent with these legislators actually having conversations with one another, actually developing policy, actually meeting people in their districts. And that's something that I want to highlight. Over the last couple months since launching our campaign, we have had several town hall events across the district. I was in Armona. You were there at that town hall event. Hanford. I was at a town hall in Bakersfield not too long ago. And that is more than Representative Valadeo has had in the last decade. He's not had a public town hall in over a decade. And please feel free to fact check me on this, right? He does these pre-screened kind of teletown halls where people can kind of call in that are pre-scripted and people, can't ask honest questions. And he even canceled that last one that he was supposed to have before voting on this bill. And that to me says that he doesn't have the guts to be accountable for his vote, to explain his vote to the district and to the people who voted him in. I think it's important that we have somebody who's committed to regularly meeting with our community, to regularly having town halls, to listen to the concerns that people are facing around childcare, around healthcare, around education and our bills and the economy. We deserve better than that here in the Central Valley. Our folks work too damn hard to not have someone show up for them when it matters.
Wow. So with that being said, what can we anticipate for future town halls for you?
I commit to having public town halls in the district on a regular basis and meeting people where they're at in the community. I've started that already, and we'll commit to doing that once elected to Congress, because we can't claim to be representing our community if we're only in DC or Sacramento or wherever. We need to be accountable to our communities here in the Central Valley, first and foremost. We need to meet people where they're at. We need to be able to understand the issues that people are facing on a daily basis. And that doesn't happen if you don't talk to people, if you don't connect with people, and if you're not here.
All right. Well, there you have it. Candidate Randy Viegas here with us today, sharing his insight, sharing his vision, and hopefully you guys can see him at a local town hall in your neighborhood. For those who are not in the Central Valley, right? How else can they reach out and
even if you're watching this from wherever you are, please support our campaign. You can visit our website, villegasforcongress.com, VILLEGAS for Congress.com.
We'll put a link in the YouTube description.
Yeah, you can go in, you can donate, you can sign up to volunteer. There may be some remote opportunities coming up in the future, phone banking. We're going to be canvassing, knocking on people's doors, letting them know about our campaign. We're going to be calling folks, make sure they're registered, to make sure they get their ballots, make sure they vote. So we're going to have several different opportunities to volunteer. You can also follow us on social media at Villegas for Congress. We are on Instagram, Blue Sky, X, Facebook, TikTok. So please tap into our campaign. And if you can, please contribute. Please donate. Like I mentioned, our average donation is only $50. And with that, you're going to help us flip this seat. You're going to help us fight back against these special interests and fight for the representation that we deserve here in the Central Valley.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time. From James Chance. You like that? James Chance? Randy Viegas for Congress, and Rob Izquierdo. I am saying love, peace, and chicken grease. We're out.
Thanks for having me.